Life Management Science Labs would like to acknowledge that we live and produce this podcast on the traditional lands of the Wurundjeri people. We'd also like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands of our listeners and our international colleagues. We'd like to pay our respects to their elders past, present, and emerging. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Aging Less, the Longevity Science Insights podcast produced by LMSL, the Life Management Science Labs. We are champions of life management science, providing structured insights informed by science and inspired by practice on key aspects of conscious living. Each week, we bring you scientific and practical insights on each element with the expert knowledge of professionals in the field. I'm your host, Marie Stella, coming to your ears from Naarm, Melbourne, Australia. Let's learn together. Hello and welcome back to the show. When we think about longevity, the conversation often drifts towards cellular health, nutritional optimization, or metabolic efficiency. But one of the most underappreciated avenues in this pursuit is anaerobic training, which is very often conflated as the domain of athletes or aspiring bodybuilders. So in this episode, we're delving into how anaerobic training contributes to our longevity. And joining us in this conversation is exercise scientist and behavioral researcher Justin Keogh. So welcome to the show, Justin. How are you going today?
Yeah, very good. Thanks, Marie. Just started the day pretty much. So yeah, great start already.
Yeah, amazing. It's wonderful to have you here. I'd love to know more about your background and what compelled you to pursue exercise science.
Probably like many people in this field, loved sort of exercise, sport and health growing up. Had visions of becoming an elite athlete. Rugby league growing up in Mackay was probably that sport. Mid-teenagers realised that wasn't going to happen. And yeah, things just sort of fell into place after that.
Yeah, that's really cool. And why do you think the average person should care about incorporating anaerobic training into their exercise routine?
It's got a host of benefits, many that are quite different to aerobic training that many people are perhaps a bit more aware of. And particularly as we get older, the anaerobic forms of training, particularly resistance training, strength training, become more and more important.
Yeah, that's a really good preface for today. But before we go further into detail, I would love to get to know you better. So this is Have You Met Justin? And my first question for you is, what is your favorite book?
That's questions like that. My favorite song, movie, I almost find impossible to answer. I read a variety of books like biographies, particularly athletes, musicians, fiction books, leadership books. Probably at the moment, I've hit an author called Robin Weidman, who's got this sort of saga, Dragon Blood, Stone Blood, and Hannah Half Blood. So yeah, that fictional series has got me hooked at the moment. I think I've read about probably 10, 12 books across those series on my Kindle in the last 4 months or something like that.
Wow, that's a rabbit hole. And
Yeah.
what about it has compelled you so strongly?
I've always been when I was young, probably 13, I read The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings. So I always liked that sort of stuff. But yeah, this series is just those 3 books, 3 series all have somewhat connected characters, but they're all quite different as well. But yeah, it's just super well written and gets you hooked really quickly.
Yeah. And are you that same way with movies?
I don't get as much. I probably read more than I watch television. But yeah, recently I did get into a bit of the Planet of the Apes, and in the last 3 or 4 weeks, I've watched Dawn and War, and I'm looking to watch some more of the recent ones soon as well.
Yeah. Did you watch the older ones or the newer ones?
Dawn and War were, I think, I think there was something like 2013, 2017 or something. So, and I'd watched some of the very older ones when I was younger as well. So yeah, it's interesting to see, I suppose, how parts of the message are similar, but all the technology and everything looks quite different as well. So yeah, it's cool.
Yeah,
But
for sure.
the action and the messages in there are quite strong in both ways, I feel. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of the Planet of the Apes as well. Actually, I think there's no the in front of Planet of the Apes, but I confuse it with. Wait, no, does the Lord of the Rings have the in front of it? I'm not sure.
That's so
But it
good.
does. Yeah, but yeah, I'm a huge fan of that franchise as well. It's just excellently made movies. Even the last one. Have you watched the last
Not
one?
yet.
Oh, yeah, it's a little bit different because it's a different director, I believe. So tonally, it's quite different, but um, just still a great, excellent movie. But aside from that, in regards to podcasts, are there any that you're listening to at the moment?
Yeah, I listen to podcasts here and there. I'm not really I go for quite a lot of walks with our dog and some family members occasionally, but typically don't like to listen to podcasts, just like to take in what's around me. But yeah, some I've listened to bits and pieces like The Proof, Huberman, Bond. We've got a Bond newsroom, so there's some really cool stories on there. I do Brazilian Jiu Jitsu, so I've listened to the BJJ Mental Models podcast series. Yeah, just I'm not a follower of any series per se. It's often more so I just stumble across an episode of something that I'm interested in and just listen to that.
Yeah, that's very different from the way that I personally approach podcasts. So that's really interesting to hear because I usually do, well, like sometimes I will see a podcast episode that would intrigue me. But for the most part, I do have like my favorite few to listen to, especially when, the host and the producers get involved and there's this whole camaraderie that I can feel from, from through this device. So that's always been nice to me. So yeah, it's really interesting to hear
I
that.
might quickly mention that I've got a colleague, Dr. Tim Henwood. Him and I do lots of the research around aging and exercise. We're putting together a podcast series at the moment ourselves. My first foray, or both of our first forays into it, tentatively titled Stronger Through the Ages. We're just trying to figure out exactly our demographic and what sort of content, how we're going to do it. So hopefully, Stronger Through the Ages will be available coming soon too.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing that. And how's the process of creating it been for you so far?
It's we've only had one creation session so far. In that we're both pretty busy, so we're doing stuff on the weekends. We were both too busy, I think, last weekend. Did a couple of hours the weekend before. I think we're doing some more this weekend. And Tim's wife Tamara is our production technology, I suppose, expert. She's learning a few things as she goes, but yeah, she's got some good tips for us at this point as well. So fingers crossed.
Yeah, wonderful. Maybe we can hear a snippet of it ourselves at some points.
Hope so.
Um, yeah. And as for the people that you look up to, either in your professional life or personal life, has there been anyone that you've really admired in particular?
Yeah, again, I suppose with my love of things like sport and science, there was always a host of different athletes at different stages I sort of looked up to. Mal Meninga was probably that first one in sort of rugby league. As I got a bit older, it probably became someone like, again, probably a bit cliche in our field, someone like Arnold Schwarzenegger. How he was able to be so focused on achieving goals, moving countries, bodybuilding, acting, and then politics. I've also competed in powerlifting and strongman, and he's still a massive advocate for all sort of strength sports. The Arnold Classic is an amazing sort of event across the world. So he's been one in many ways, and probably was something else that not all people on pedestals necessarily do. He's admitted some of his mistakes along the way as well. So yeah, being able to sort of share that side of yourself and admit when you've got things a bit wrong is great to see. But then just personally, like my wife, kids, close friends, host of people in a variety of different ways as well.
Yeah, that's really nice to hear. I do really admire when someone, especially a public figure, has the courage to be vulnerable and admit when they've made mistakes too. So yeah, thank you for sharing that with us. My last question for you before we end of the segment is, have there been any classes or courses that you've taken in your lifetime that's stuck with you to this day?
Yeah, I suppose when I was young, sort of in uni age, just doing uni itself, doing my fitness leader, which is a personal training course, which has now been superseded quite a bit. Australian Strength Conditioning Association level ones, those sort of things. Very early on, those are really cool. Perhaps now in my role at Bond, it's a bit more of a leadership role in that I'm the head of the Exercise and Sport Science program and the Associate Dean of Research in our faculty. So things such as leadership and relationships and being able to sort of get people together. And again, like my background in sport, it's like it's a team. So for those groups of individuals to work well, understanding people, personalities is important. So we've had some really cool visitors to Bond in that sort of space. So Kamal Sama has a book, but also a series called The Art of Win-Win Conversations. That's been really cool because often in negotiating, I don't know, I suppose going back to sport or war, it's win-lose. If I win, the other person has to lose. So that win-win conversations by Kamal's been really awesome. And a leadership masterclass by Brian Dolan as well has been really, I think, really instrumental in sort of shaping my view on some of those leadership roles. But then it also spills over into your personal life as well.
Yeah, that's what makes your experience unique. It's this whole I guess combination of takeaways that you've gotten from various avenues of your life. So yeah, thank you for sharing that with us. I feel like we got to know you a little bit better now. So let's move on to the interview now. And for starters, how would you define longevity?
Longevity is typically defined as just how long you live. And while that's important, and I suppose if we look over the last century, the the length of life in many countries is increased dramatically, and that's great. Unfortunately, the flip side of that, with our more sedentary lifestyles, processed foods, etc., is that many of those later years aren't necessarily lived well. We have chronic diseases, we're in hospitals, we have falls, etc., dementia. So there's a new concept being proposed called health span, which I think is a really cool sort of idea for us to promote and get people aware of.
Yeah. Yeah, I really love that new concept as well. And I think it's really interesting that um as as a race, as humans as a race, we have gone through these extreme lengths to make things more convenient for ourselves, but also at the same time, like improve medical procedures and health awareness and all these things, but while making things everything convenient for ourselves, we have like inadvertently also made our later lives difficult. But yeah, it's a process, and there's several moving parts to it, and that's beautiful. But secondarily, how would you define anaerobic training? What are some examples of it?
Yeah, so I think people who've got an understanding of exercise understand aerobic training probably better. So aerobic training is a lower to moderate intensity sort of form of training, typically where we utilize oxygen to produce energy. It's very useful for long-term production of energy that doesn't produce that muscle burn, the lactate, the lactic acid that we associate with something like a 400-meter sprinter in the athletics, where at the end of that 40 to 50 seconds, they are just spent. However, so the anaerobic training is a higher intensity exercise. Could be anything from a couple of seconds, such as a weightlifter or powerlifter doing their one repetition maximum. That's the heaviest weight they can lift for one rep. But still up to 30, even 60 seconds at anaerobic metabolism can still be the predominant way that we produce energy. So it's not as simple as saying if it's in this time points, it's anaerobic or aerobic. All of those systems play somewhat of a role, but if you're exercising at a really high intensity for less than a minute in general, a big proportion of that energy will be anaerobic.
Yes, and I also do see a lot of people in the fitness realm use this term HIIT. Is that the same as anaerobic training, or is that different?
Yeah, so that's a form, and HIIT, so high intensity interval training, is a form of exercise where we alternate higher intensity, which is predominantly anaerobic in that period of time, with some periods of recovery, which the aerobic system will then help us recover before we then start that next bout of high intensity activity again. And that's a nice form of training. And in terms of exercise prescription, we can modify a host of things such as the duration of the work period, the rest period, as well as the relative intensities of those periods, how many sets. And that is a form of training that can benefit people. And to some extent, resistance training, like just going to the gym, is sort of that anyway. You go hard for perhaps a 30-second set, which is maybe 8 repetitions. You then rest for a minute or two, and repeat. So what you do in a gym is, again, in essence, a form of that interval, that high intensity interval training.
Right. So, from what I'm understanding, HIIT involves anaerobic training, but it's not anaerobic training. That's
It is, and that typical high intensity training where, like, and one common version that you can easily do at home is Tabata. And for some reason, they've come up with a 20-second high intensity interval with a 10-second rest period. So very easy to do it in a circuit where you might have perhaps even simple things that you don't need extra equipment. It could be push-ups, squats, lunges, burpees. Not necessarily a great fan of burpees, but anyway, if you got some dumbbells or bands, some other activities there, go pretty hard for 20 seconds on the exercise, move to the next station, which is in essence your 10-second rest, and then repeat. So that's a very simple way to get some of that sort of HIIT involved. But you can also go for much longer intervals and even much shorter sprint intervals as well. So depending on, I suppose, your exercise goals, what you prefer the most, all those varieties can work.
interesting. And you told us a little bit about why people should care about doing anaerobic training. But could you tell us a little bit more, shed more light on how anaerobic training contributes to someone's longevity or, living more vitally in their later years?
So probably the simplest way to describe that is if we think of the aging process, one of the most obvious changes in just what we see is the muscle mass and strength losses that occur with aging. So particularly probably into the 50s, perhaps for some people, or into the 60s, this starts becoming quite noticeable and then accelerates relatively quickly from there on if people aren't doing things to prevent that. So the biggest challenge with losing muscle, we often gain some fat as well. And muscle and bone are very connected in that if your muscles are strong, because the muscles pull on the bone, then the bones are typically strong as well. So osteoporosis is a big issue. And most people with osteoporosis are also going to be quite weak, have limited muscle mass as well. So a lot of the conditions we see, the musculoskeletal conditions, just reflect a lack of muscle mass and strength, and even simple things like function. If we think of some of our older relatives, how many might struggle to walk up a flight of stairs? How many struggle to walk a couple of 100 meters or cross a road with 2 lanes in each direction because they just can't walk fast enough? How many can't get out of a chair easily? So when we start thinking of these activities that younger individuals take for granted every day, if older people have lost that muscle mass and strength and no longer do those sort of activities, the spiral into disability and dependence just accelerates. So it's really important as we get into perhaps middle age in particular, And maybe for women, a little bit even more so than men because of their increased risk of osteoporosis, that resistance training becomes a part of their sort of weekly habits.
Yeah, and from what you know, what are some common misconceptions about anaerobic exercise that might hold people back from reaping its benefits?
Some probably, again, just reflect the lack of knowledge that many allied health clinicians still will focus on cardiovascular health and promote walking, and that's still the public health message in essence. And walking's good, but it doesn't give all the benefits that this anaerobic, particularly resistance training, can perform. So the other sort of challenges are it's harder for us to encapsulate a simple public health message about how to perform resistance training, whereas aerobic training, be it take 10,000 steps per day or do 150 minutes of moderate physical activity a week, is a relatively simple message to get across to people. And that 150 minutes, we can quite easily go, all right, mathematically, that's 30 minutes by 5 times per week. So it's quite easy to think of how to do that. And us as exercise scientists probably need to come up with some simple ways to sort of get the message across that's easier for everyone to understand and implement in their everyday lives.
Yeah, and it seems like part of the reason for that is, like I mentioned at the start of the episode, we have so many distractions now, and we have gotten so used to a life of convenience that it's really difficult for a lot of people, myself included, to grapple the fact that I have to do something that I'm not used to and that will be a huge inconvenience to me. So walking and jogging, it's a lot more convenient. It fits seamlessly into my daily life. But apart from that, what are some of the common struggles that people face when attempting to incorporate this anaerobic exercise into their routines?
Even what you said there, Marie, I might go a little bit into that. So for those people who do enjoy their aerobic activities like be it running, be it cycling, etc. What you can do there is implement some of that HIIT training into some of those sessions a week. So instead of just going out and maybe doing 20 to 30 minutes at a moderate intensity, what you can look to do is implement some high intensity bouts within that period of time, followed by low intensity. So if you're going out walking, you could potentially do a combination of walk and running, where those running periods might be 30 seconds, 60 seconds, maybe up to 4 minutes at a higher intensity where you are basically out of breath, not exhausted, but you can't sustain that for much longer. And then you have some walk recoveries. If you're doing your cardiovascular training in a gym, again, it could be in essence sprinting for 20 to 30 seconds on the bike, followed by some recovery. And if you look at sprint cyclists, how amazingly developed are their lower body muscles?
Yeah,
Like some of those
exceptionally.
athletes would put bodybuilders to shame in many competitions. So while they do plenty of weights, again, that sprint cycling is a potent stimulus for lower body as well. So things like that. And if you enjoy water sports like swimming, again, that already is quite a bit of resistance for the upper body. So if you do some more sprint sort of efforts in a swimming session, if you enjoy surfing, like here in Australia, obviously many of us live around the beaches. Things like that can be really nice forms of high intensity interval training as well, because to catch a wave, you've got to sort of sprint out against the wave and then start a sprint to catch the wave. So in essence, they are performing HIIT training when they're out in the surf. Some of them are out in the surf for a couple of hours.
Wonderful. I never even knew that. Most people don't really look to surfing as a form of, well, kind of a form of exercise, but like not deliberately HIIT or like anaerobic training. So that's really interesting to hear. And what are some also lesser known examples of incorporating anaerobic training into your exercise?
Yeah, one of my colleagues in Melbourne, Jackson Fife, wrote a paper really nice a couple of years ago about different ways to incorporate resistance training into your everyday activities. And this is where I suppose, like, as I call myself somewhat now a behavioral researcher, we know so much evidence. And sorry, when I say we, us researchers who are embedded in the field, we live and breathe this every day. But again, we haven't got that message to the public that well as yet. So understanding people's behavior becomes important. So one of his suggestions is something he coined the phrase exercise snacking. So it's basically the same message as like if you going to a shopping center, don't spend 5 to 10 minutes driving around the shopping center to get a close car park. Find a car park. It might be 4 or 5 minutes away from the front door. Just park in that car park, particularly at Christmas time when you never get a park, and just walk into the shopping center. So that is itself an exercise snack. It's an aerobic exercise snack. So the anaerobic side of things, and we can actually use technology to benefit us in this case. We all have alarms on our phones for different things. So you could put an alarm on your phone every 2 hours, every 4 hours, every hour, and just do a simple little set of something in your office. So it could be simply you do 10 sit to stands. So sit down, take 2 to 3 seconds to sit down under control, stand up with your hands on your chest, repeat. So for some middle-aged older people, if they do something like that several times a day, that is in itself a pretty good stimulus to promote some level of muscle strength and hypertrophy maintenance at least. So then you can easily incorporate sort of little things that you've got in your room. And if we think of perhaps some older people, one thing that so many older people focus on in their life is their grandchildren or great-grandchildren. And if you're a mother, Marie, you give your child to your parents or grandparents, and they can't get out of that chair with the baby on them because the toddler baby, let's say it weighs 5 or 6 kilograms, that's a load. That means they're just staying there. So simple things like that, or doing push-ups with your hands on your desk at multiple times throughout the day. Occupational therapists have done some research in this field as well, and they'll make suggestions like stick post-it notes or something around the house. So if you're in the kitchen, every time you're in the kitchen using the kettle or the microwave, there's a little post-it note that just has a picture of an exercise. Again, it could be the squat, it could be some calf raises, leg raises, whatever it could be, a lunge perhaps, maybe with your hand on a bench for balance initially. Incorporating some little things like that, taking stairs more often. If you can take stairs 1 step at a time, look to take 2 steps at a time. Again, challenge those lower leg muscles even more. If you can accumulate some of those activities throughout the day, that's, again, a great place to start for many people. And that may be sufficient for many people. And it may also be that stimulus to go, yeah, I'm getting some benefits from this. I think I want to go to a gym now, and then get perhaps even bigger benefits from there.
Yeah, first of all, I love the idea of the term exercise snacking. I already have a positive affiliation with snacking in my brain. So, exercise snacking makes it sound fun. And yeah, I definitely will be referring to it as that from now on.
I
So, great
agree. Like
idea.
that was a great term, and a couple of things I forgot there as well. It also has great benefits in terms of blood sugar level control. So if your blood sugar levels are elevated, potentially type 2 diabetic, that may assist there. And for those of us at work who perhaps have that mid-afternoon sort of tired phase, that little lull in the afternoon, just doing some of those activities, getting the blood flowing, the body moving, can be sufficient to just reinvigorate you for those last couple of hours of your work day.
Yeah, wonderful. And in terms of protein, which we hear a lot about in the fitness world, for muscle building particularly, but as far as to benefit our longevity, as far as that goes, how much do we actually need?
There is still debate about that. And again, debate's good because it always stimulates more research. Most public health guidelines for adults are probably saying somewhere about zero point 0.8 to 1 gram of protein per kilogram of body mass. So I'm somewhere between 85 to 90 kilograms. So for me, I'd be looking to have 75 to 90 grams or something like that per day for the average person. I continue to train with weights quite a bit. So while I don't track my nutrition that much at all, I'm probably getting somewhere about 1.5 grams of protein per kilogram body weight, perhaps a little bit more, up to 2 some days. Recommendations for older adults are increased. So perhaps anything from 1.2 grams to 1.5 grams per body weight. So again, perhaps a 60 kilogram older person might need to go up to 90 grams of protein per day. And some reasons for that include the fact that they are typically losing muscle mass. So protein is important for that. And unfortunately, as we age, our digestion is perhaps compromised as well. So we don't necessarily take on board all those proteins that we break down into amino acids as effectively. So, and if you are in hospital with a muscle wasting condition, those numbers could potentially even increase a little bit, depending on a few other things that the accredited dietitians would take into account. So, and unfortunately, like my mother, as an example, is in a residential aged care facility, and it's the foods that she enjoys eating the most typically aren't that high in protein.
Yep. Oh, that's rough. Do you bring her some protein heavy food?
Try to. She definitely gets a bit more protein when she comes over. We typically have a barbecue. She loves salmon, so she'll get probably 25 grams of protein with a piece of salmon. But yeah, it's one of the issues again with aging can be sort of meat sources that are higher protein and easier to assimilate sources may not be as appealing if they're not cooked well, if they're a little bit tough. Again, a lack of some of their full teeth, reductions in jaw strength, etc., may make those meals less appealing. And if the meal looks more like pureed food, again, it's not necessarily a great eating experience as well. So I've got some colleagues, some dietitian colleagues who are working really hard in that space to try to maximize the nutritional contents of foods, while at the same time still making it appetizing and edible for the clients, and also cost effective for the aged care provider. So getting all those things at the same time is a really complex challenge. And obviously people have such diverse food preferences or tastes. What is that mixture of foods that you provide as well?
Right. It does sound like a huge struggle, but the dietitian industry, they have really progressed a lot in the recent years. So I am optimistic and hoping for the best.
And yeah, even just going back to my mother, she did have a period of weight loss last year or late in 23. She's a small frame lady, but was just on the cusp of 40 kilograms, whereas the normal weight would be about 45. So at that point, some of those supplements were used as well, which do give a good amount of protein, maybe 20, 25 grams in a bottle with reasonable energy and vitamin mineral content. So that was also, they can be very useful at those sort of times to supplement that, particularly if the appetite wasn't there as it was for my mum at that occasion.
Yeah. And from what you know, what are some appropriate plant-based alternative for those with dietary preferences?
Yeah, so dietitians are definitely the people to talk about here, but you've got a host of all of our whole grains are typically have some amounts of protein. When you can look at all your pulses, like your nuts, your peanuts, peas, chickpeas, all those things can be quite useful as well. Tofu, which is your soy-based products, things like tahini, peanut butters, all those things can be quite high in protein. And it's interesting, even things such as, we don't think of it, some of our spreads, Vegemite and peanut butter, typically are about 20 something percent protein by weight. The drawback is obviously you're not going to eat too much of either of them. Vegemite in particular is very salty. And if you do consume lots of peanut butter, you're also going to get lots of calories, which can be maybe too much for some older people. But for some who've got poor appetite and maybe are losing weight too quickly, peanut butter being a high calorie sort of food, lots of nutrients in it, can actually be something if they tolerate nuts. Is a great source of many nutrients for older people, including things such as protein. And then you've got some of your different, your non-dairy based milks. And for those who still feel they, for whatever reason, aren't getting sufficient protein, there's a host of vegan protein powders out there as well. And again, I'm not advocating 3 of those shakes a day, but potentially one of those shakes a day where you might get an extra 20 or so grams of, be it peanuts, a pea, or some other like a hemp protein, can easily supply you an extra 20 grams of protein a day, which can be drunk in a matter of minutes. And many of them actually taste really good now. So it can be a bit of a trial and error approach. And many companies will have little sachets, which is just a 1-serve option. So you can find those that actually taste good and don't cause bloating or things of that nature, which some can for different people.
Okay, this is really intriguing. What does a bad protein powder or protein shake taste like?
It's just personal preference. So many, like when I was younger, you basically had 3 flavor options. You had chocolate, strawberry, and vanilla when I was like a teenager growing up. But now some companies have got like 10 to 12 sort of varieties, flavors of the same product. So if you love salted caramel, you just try a couple of different brands of salted caramel, see what you think tastes the most natural, or whatever you like, or be it chocolate or vanilla. And again, it's so easy. If you've got a blender these days, you can throw in some fruits, you can throw in tahini, peanut butter, yogurt. And again, if you're a vegetarian, all those dairy-based products, or the non-dairy cheeses and yogurts, can also be sources of protein as well. So yeah.
Yeah, I would love to see like a pandan flavored one, or like a maple bacon, something like
I've
that.
never had that, but potentially if you search that online, I would almost think some company has done that somewhere in the world.
So, what are some signs that indicate progress in muscle function beyond just lifting heavier weights?
The first thing ultimately is that you'll notice that what you're trying to do in the gym becomes easier. So if you start doing 3 sets of 10 with, let's say, a 20 kilogram load in a leg press or something, after a couple sessions, those 3 sets of 10 become much easier. And what we would then typically suggest is you progressively load, you increase the weight that you're lifting. So you might go to 25 kilos as an example. And if you sustain this for a period of time, like that increase in strength becomes very noticeable. I'm probably not like everyone, but I track my weights. I still have diaries from like the mid 90s when I started powerlifting that I can go back to and look at what I was lifting. And then I'll have weekly goals based on what I did the week before. So that's a part of it. But then after a period of time, maybe a month or 2, you'll start noticing differences in your body, or people around you will go, "Oh, Marie, you're looking more muscular. Like you've got this definition in your quads, or I see some tricep muscles now," or something like that. And then you'll also start to notice that some activities of daily living become easier. So if we go back to some of those examples of an older person who struggles to get out of a chair or walk upstairs, they're now doing those activities again. They're now able to sit down on the floor, play with their grandchildren, and get up on their own without needing yourself to come and help them up. So it's those sort of things that, as a behavioral sort of researcher of some capacity, we sell exercise for. So if we can understand each client's sort of background and what they want in their latter years, for many people it's just independence, it's health, it's that health span that they live healthy, they're not going to the hospital all the time, they're doing the things they want to do. It could be hiking holidays, it could be, again, on the Gold Coast, walking on the beach But if you've got poor balance and limited lower body strength, walking in soft sand in particular is really challenging. So the benefits of exercise are what those things do to your life. And if they've played a sport or a recreation like maybe golf or lawn bowls or something, or now sport taking the world, pickleball, if they want to get into a pickleball group, if they're now able to do those activities, that's the progression that people are seeing. And perhaps more medically, if they've got things like type 2 diabetes or elevated cholesterol or blood pressure or things like that, when they go to see their doctor, perhaps a few months after starting their program, and some of those numbers are improving in the positive direction, it's those sort of medical aspects that can improve as well. And someone with osteoporosis, who's maybe had their bone mineral density decline across multiple scans over the last few years, perhaps even see it maintained or slightly elevated, those are really positive signs to see as well.
Yeah, and conversely, what risks are associated with anaerobic training, especially for older adults who may have weaker joints?
Yeah, so there are a host of what we call relative and absolute contraindications to different forms of exercise. Those can increase with age, but more so they increase with different conditions that are more prevalent in aging. So if we think of something like cancer, there's great research now in breast and prostate cancer coming out of Australia. We've got excellent groups across the country doing amazing research around exercise for different breast and prostate cancer groups that have changed what we call cancer survivorship. So both those conditions, we now have about 90% survival rates 5 years post-diagnosis in Australia, which is great. All the medical improvements in screening, diagnosis, and treatments have increased their survival. But again, both those cancers come at quite severe costs. If we think of both cancers, you might remove the prostate, you might remove the breast. That has not just physical, but many psychosocial challenges to the individual. And in some way, men lose some of their masculinity. They lose their muscle and bone, increase fat with the androgen deprivation therapy, which reduces their testosterone. And women, again, will feel often less feminine if they've lost their breasts, their hair falls out with the therapies they're on, and their hormonal changes as well. So exercise is now playing a huge role in cancer survivorship, ensuring that people who've been diagnosed with cancer and undergo some pretty invasive treatments are now living healthy, fulfilling lives, and not just sort of, in essence, what doctors were saying years ago, just rest. And one of the other big issues for cancer is cancer-related fatigue. And generally, when we're fatigued, we rest. But the evidence actually says appropriate exercise, which can include some resistance training, anaerobic training, actually improves fatigue symptoms in people with cancer. So that's just one sort of, I suppose, group where we have that. But in general, general recommendations would be, particularly for an older person who's got some medical conditions and takes medications, really important to go see your GP, get some sort of assessment done there, and initially probably go to an exercise physiologist. So they're accredited exercise professionals, typically do 3 to 4 years of university training, and they specialize in exercise prescription for people with more challenging diseases. So they will work together with perhaps a GP, a physiotherapist, or a specialist to ensure that their client's condition, their medications, perhaps injuries or things like knee osteoarthritis, that'll then impact how they prescribe different forms of exercise to that individual. So that, again, is some of the complexities of this for older people. But if you're a 65-year-old person or 50-year-old person that's pretty healthy, again, those exercise snacking things are things you can do straight away while you might book in for your GP visit, etc. Yep.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing all of that with us. It's been such a fascinating and very informative interview so far. So now let's move on to the practices and habits segment of the show, where we will talk a little bit about the day-to-day application of what you've just shared with us. So for someone new to anaerobic exercise, what habit would you recommend incorporating into their routine without feeling overwhelmed?
Yeah. So for the person who's perhaps less active, doesn't really do much exercise, again, probably those exercise snacks where you look to do something like those squats, the sit to stands, the lunges, perhaps again, push ups with your hand on an elevated surface, or knee push ups if a regular push up's too hard. Maybe get some TheraBands to do some pulling exercises as well. That's a great start. And if you've got stairs or hills around your location, use them as well. That's definitely a starting point. If you feel your function is declining, those activities of daily living or recreational activities that you want to do, you're no longer able to do because of muscle weakness or balance, definitely then starting a gym-based program is going to be crucial. Exercise physiologists, as I mentioned before, can be a great starting point. Or finding gyms that have again, they use different terms, but exercise classes that are structured more to middle-aged and older people. And there's more of those available around Australia. And one thing I forgot to mention as well, exercise physiology in Australia, our association is Exercise and Sports Science Australia. And there is actually a link on their website of where to find a local exercise physiologist. So regardless of where you're in Australia, you can type in where you are living and see where the closest exercise physiologist is. And if you go to your doctor, they can, in essence, give you a health package where you can see allied health professionals for free, or at least at a discounted rate, 5 sessions per year. You can then access the exercise physiologist through that healthcare plan.
Fantastic. Thank you for sharing that with us. That was really eye opening. I had no idea that this was even out there. So, yeah, I'm pretty sure this is new information to a few other people as well. Now
And
let's move on.
sort of
Yeah.
saying, in addition to that, sorry, Marie, if you're a DVA card holder, if you're on NDIS, and even your private insurances, there's many opportunities there to at least partially fund or fully fund some of those services every year as well.
Yeah, exactly. So that's wonderful. Now let's move on to the open mic section, and this is your opportunity to talk about anything that you're passionate about, and it doesn't have to be related to the topic, but if you like it to be, that's all good too. Floor's entirely yours, Justin. Please take it away.
Wow. So exercise has always been a really important an important part of my life. I still get to the gym 3 to 4 times a week, try to lift as heavy as I can. So yeah, I still like to do well in things like jiu-jitsu and just be super like able to do things I like. So even a couple of weekends ago, one of my best mates, he's got this beautiful property out in the hinterland, asked me to come over and move some big stones around in his property. So I'm still often in our friend group the guy that gets asked over to come and move heavy things. So I'm not a skilled tradesman. They do all those sort of things, but I move heavy stuff around to help them do these jobs. So being able to still do that at the age of 50 is still pretty good for the ego as well. But yeah, other things I suppose for me now is just finding balance in life as well. Getting out in nature, I think, is really important. So again, just taking my dog for a walk or walking on the beach on the weekends, and just I suppose doing things that you want to do. And perhaps as you get older, maybe the word's not selfish per se, but many people perhaps focus on doing stuff for others a lot. And while that's great, you still have to look after yourself. And the analogy I use is when you're on an airplane at start, before you take off, the hostess and the host, they'll always go through the oxygen thing, and they always say, put your own oxygen mask on first before you help others. So the other message, I suppose, is make sure you do things that fill your own cup, that keep you motivated, so that whatever your job is, and that can be any job, and it's not just employment, it's just your role in the house, friends and family. Whatever you do is done whereby if you're happy and healthy, you can contribute to whatever aspect of society you want to. So find those things that make you happy and incorporate those in your life. And particularly as we get older, investing in some of this anaerobic training, particularly resistance training, twice a week, maybe 3 times a week, 30 to 40-minute sessions, or at least that exercise snacking pretty much most days, will enable you to live a fit, independent life and maximize that health span that you have.
Yeah, why not start now?
Exactly.
Yeah,
Because the more that you build in your 20s and 30s, etc., even if we start to decline as we get older, you're still going to be above that sort of threshold for disability. So that's the crucial thing. Like you're not going to be as strong as you are in your 90s that you were in your 20s. But if you're strong in your 20s, 30s, 40s, and 50s, you're more likely still to be strong in your 60s, 70s, and 80s, etc.
Yeah, and just make your life a lot easier when
Yeah.
you have other age-related challenges to face as well. So yeah, very, very good use of the open mic. So thank you for that, Justin. If our listeners want to find out more about you and what you do, where can they go?
Yeah, I do like Bond University where I work. The research profile there is pretty clear and extensive. I have a LinkedIn page. I use that a little bit, post some stuff there, respond to things. I'm on Twitter. So my Twitter profile is Dr. Strength for Life, I think. I'll double check that. So I'm on Twitter a little bit. But again, with my link at Bond, you can send emails or things like that as well. So yeah, those are some ways that you can, I suppose, find me on the internet. And every now and again, there'll be different things on YouTube at some point as well.
All right, amazing. We'll leave those links in the show notes. Thank you everyone for tuning in, and we'll catch you in the next episode.
Thanks very much, Marie. Pleasure.
You have been listening to Aging Less, the Longevity Science Insights podcast produced by LMSL, the Life Management Science Labs. More episodes are available from 10 life management perspectives and can be found by searching LMSL on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, and other podcasting apps available on your devices. If you enjoyed this episode, please rate, share, and subscribe to our channel so that other people can find it and we can continue to provide quality content. More of our work can be found on our website at longevity.lifemanagementsciencelabs.com, where you can join our movement. I'm Marie Stella. Thanks for tuning in.